This video is called the Mayan calendar, but that's not really what this is about. It's related, but what I wanted to talk about was two ancient cultures that I've delved into and have discovered that have a very rich and wonderful history. And it amazes me and offends me greatly that, you know, people always in America and in Western countries in general, but mostly America, look down on Mexicans as the sloppy, lazy, worthless, underclass. And, you look at all the crime and shit in Mexico, and that has become the stereotype for all Mexicans, and that's become what we associate with Mexican people. And something I want to talk about is the ancestral origins of Mexico, and what they used to be way before the Spaniards came and took it all. First, I want to talk about the Mayans, obviously. The Mayans were astronomers, first and foremost. They were a tribe of thinkers. They believed it was their biggest duty to explore the skies and learn the details of interstellar phenomena. It was their job to basically learn how the planets circle around and to discover new moons and new stars, and they tried to make sense out of it all. They tried to make sense out of the orbiting structural system of our entire galaxy, our universe. They were, in those times, what we would consider physicists today, and that made up the majority of their society. They were pretty much the closest thing we've ever had to a technocracy. And so they were not really a violent people, as some suggest. They did believe in sacrifice, but mostly it was blood-based rituals, which means that they gave blood to their gods as a tribute. And that didn't necessarily require the death of anybody. So to say that they were a violent society is way off target. I mean, so they asked for blood. For that matter, you can say any religion that says circumcision should be used is a violent religion, which many people would argue, but regardless. Then there's the Aztecs. The Aztecs were a violent people. They were a warrior-based race, and I would say better than Vikings or barbarians or any of that, because the Aztecs were not a hierarchical system. They did not believe in rank. They believed in respect. The way you earned respect in an Aztec tribe was that you became a warrior. And the way you proved your worth as a warrior was to bring back your victim. It didn't have anything to do with how many people you killed or how strong you were. It had to do with if you had what it took to bring back a kidnapped victim to your tribe camp. That's how you proved your masculinity. And I'm sure they probably brought back mostly women so that they could reproduce with said women and have more soldiers in the future, as well as something to do in between wars. And they did have gods that demanded actual sacrifices, and they were more than willing to give it to them and shed the blood of their enemies to appease their war-based gods. And what makes Aztecs most interesting is when they died, they believed that there was a war after death. The war to keep the sun moving. They believed that their spirits would actually ascend unto the sun and keep it in orbit. That's pretty interesting because, it says something about them where they understood the struggle of life and death. They understood what it meant to survive and the will to survive. And it was so great in them that they literally believed that their souls existed to live, to strive to live, and that they would do this by moving the sun so that life could continue to exist on the planet. That's pretty deep. And when I think about it, it's very sad that not only did the Spaniards take all that from them, they took their land, they took many lives, they took their gold, they took their history, but most importantly, they took their pride. They took all of that away, all that rich culture with them. And, it's sad because then as the centuries moved onward, it was forgotten. and Mexicans became the victim of capitalism. They became victim of the white man's idea of right and wrong, and have suffered for it ever since. Everyone associates Mexicans with, like, lazy people and poor people and welfare queens, as they put it. You know what creates welfare? Poverty. Welfare is the byproduct of capitalism. You wouldn't have welfare if you didn't need people that needed to be on welfare. Why do they need to be on welfare? Because they don't own capital. And how can you own capital? It's not that easy, So, and what does it mean to own a chunk of land and a house? Nothing. Because you still don't really own capital. So you're a slave no matter what. And the only difference between a person that owns their home and doesn't is how far they are from homelessness. That's all it means. It means how far they are from being at the absolute bottom. And nothing else. So there's this illusion of class. There's this illusion that somehow the middle class is so much better off than the poor. And it's ridiculous. Unless you own capital, unless you own the means of production, unless you own oil or food or water or something that you can hang over the head of the people, you are a slave. You may be a better off slave, you may be fed better, you may live in a better house, you may have better clothes, you may live more comfortably, your jobs might not be quite as difficult, but you are still a slave. And you're the worst kind of slave, because you are the delusional slave that does not realize your own enslavement, and you continue onward with this sick path. You are the reason, half the reason at least, this shit can continue. So, that's why a lot of people should not be welcome in the revolution. Whether or not they are a victim does not necessarily mean they are innocent. It just means that they are too stupid to see their own enslavement, and they will prove a big liability. And, that is the culture that the Spaniards and many other Western civilizations left us with. And it's sickening to think about how this once proud and great people had not only had that all taken from them, but if there is a life after death, have to witness the struggle and the turmoil and the degrading of their future generations. Ever since, they have been labeled as these subhuman trash, and their great ancestors have to witness that. That's pretty depressing. And if anything comes of the 2012 Mayan calendar ending, hopefully it would mean something big that would completely turn around the Western domination. And, because it's gotten so much worse. The entire world is subject to the whims of a few people. And that is just terrible. And, the Spaniards did not conquer all this land to just convert people to a different religion. They didn't do it so that everyone would speak the same language and that everyone would worship the same God and ascribe to the same morals. That's not why they did it. They did it for power. The Spaniards slaughtered millions of people for money. They did it to find gold. They did it to own new land. They did it to be selfish. They had no altruistic intentions in mind to bind the people to one universal rule, to one universal ideal, and that everyone could relatively get along and be peaceful under the banner of one flag and one God. That was never their intention. And there's nothing to even remotely suggest it. So, that's what gets me about imperialism. It's not the fact that they go to war. There's nothing wrong with war in and of itself. If you are fighting for a positive ideal and the enemy is evil, then war is justified. War is the only really right thing to do in such a situation. But that is not how it plans out 99% of the time. 99% of wars are based off self-intentions of pure benefit for you and fuck everybody else. It's just pure selfishness, pure arrogance, and no compassion or empathy whatsoever. It's not based off making the world better. It's based off making your life better. It's based off your superiority complex and thinking that your race is better or that your religion is better and that everyone else should have to suffer because of it. There is no religion, nearly with as much blood on its hands and has as much sacrifice to it as Christianity, at least in its historical context. Nowadays, Christianity is just a watered-down neo-pagan clusterfuck. And at that, I don't even think Christianity was what ancient times considered it. Christianity is this big gray area between Judaism, Islam, and something else. Because Judaism, Islam, and Christianity all believe relatively in the same God and same prophets. They just take it in completely different directions. And the Vatican is what solidified Christian belief. And that is why the Vatican, for the longest time, was so opposed to Protestants. Protestants were a deviation from the Catholics' idea of religion entirely. So, that's why there's that rivalry there. But nowadays, it doesn't even fucking matter because that's how much land and capital they own. Where at this point, it's moot because, they own everything. And they have no intention of world peace or productivity, technological achievement, discovery, life. They don't care about any of those things. They don't care about your freedoms. They don't care about your enlightenment. They don't care about, you being able to live your life with purpose and dignity. To them, it's just about ownership. To them, it's just about glorifying themselves and fuck everybody else. And the church has become nothing more than a clubhouse for people to circle jerk one another and praise God in vain. Because, they all pat each other on the back and they pray and they say the verses and they do their little rituals, and it's just a popularity contest. That's all it is. That's the only reason why people feel the need to convert other people to Christianity. Some Christians authentically believe souls are in danger, that God is vengeful and God is angry, that people do not ascribe to worshiping Him, and that He is going to punish those people because they are of false ideals and false gods, which might be true. But what are those gods? What are those ideals? What is sin? What is the nature of sin? And are you necessarily worshiping the right God just because you say you are? Those are questions Christians are not willing to ask or try to answer because it goes in conflict to what they've been conditioned to do, and that's just get people to join their secret club. That's all it is. It's all about membership. It's all about, ranks. That's all. It might as well be a fucking Facebook group, and all they care about is getting the most likes. That's it. And that's what angers me, because for the longest time, most religions did not center around this. They were about the principle. They had real principles. They may have not always been positive principles, but they certainly had principles. And, modern Western religion has no principles. It cannot afford to, because their only real principle is owning more capital, having more influence, and controlling the minds of many, many people. So when that is your principle, all other righteous, dignified, respectable principles are to the wayside. And, that's why I don't worry about the end of the world. Either it's going to happen or it isn't. And if it does happen, that's a good thing. It would be a great thing to see all of this collapse. To see all those years of turmoil and bloodshed and tyranny just be taken away from the rulers. Because, our planet is ruled by a very elite few. We know this. We all know this, Some of us believe it's the Illuminati. Some of us believe it's the Jews. Some of us believe it's the reptilians. Some of us believe that, it's demons or aliens from the sky or whatever. The point is, very few people own all of it and have no qualms about killing people that get in their way or dissent or, anything. And they're not willing to share. So that is why the world should collapse. And the Mayans and Aztecs can rest in peace knowing that at some point, this all fell down upon the rulers and, it ends. The enslavement ends. The bloodshed ends. The deaths and pain of everybody comes to an end. And evil finally gets what it deserves, and that is the great equalizer. That no matter how cunning people are, no matter how ruthless they are, no matter how much land they control or minds they control, it cannot stop the inevitable demise by outside interference. You know, evil people cannot stop a hurricane. Evil people cannot stop a great catalysm that comes from above or from below. All they can do is control the minds of stupid goyim who are willing to ascribe to their false ideals. That's the only power they have. The power to make you think that what they're doing is right, the power to think the way the world is right, the power to just sit on your ass and, you know, wait for your inevitable death. That is their only power, to convince you that everything's just fine the way it is. It's just fine the fact that moderators stomp all over our rights. It's just fine that Facebook is a monopoly on the social networking platform and, you know, takes advantage of our privacy and sells it to big corporations, and they got all kinds of data and they got all kinds of statistics and make all kinds of money from it, but then we don't see a dime of it, and then turn around and say that some people can't post on Facebook because, oh, Facebook doesn't want them there, you broke the terms of service, all this other shit. And then those people are not allowed to get the benefits of couponing and social networking and making new friends and finding out new things because some capital owner fucking says you can't. So fuck the non-capital owners, fuck the serfs. They're not there to enjoy life. They're not there to make new friends. They're not there to, you know, find purpose and meaning. They're not there to reap from all the fruits of labor and to enjoy life and to take advantage of opportunity. No, they are there to be a stat. They are there to, you know, post on their blogs so companies can psychologically analyze them and use that to their advantage. They're fucking cattle. That's the way Mark Zuckerberg thinks of you. That's the way every company that advertises on Facebook thinks of you. That's what the Illuminati thinks of you. That's what fucking Alex Jones and David Icke think of you too. It doesn't matter whether or not you blame an Illuminati or not, because that's what their intention is. Their intention is to use you as a platform to excel themselves. They are purely selfish, egomaniacal psychopaths. And that is the problem with our world. And the problem with you is that you don't fucking care. You worship them. They are your pharaohs. You build great pyramids in their honor by going to work every day. There is no difference between our modern civilization and past civilizations that had slaves. The only difference is the technology's better, and therefore we have air conditioning, and, you know, cooked food, and indoor bathrooms. But essentially, it's the same shit. In principle, it's the same shit. And people back then were just as stupid, just as subordinate, and just as vile as they are today. If, you know, the powers that be decided that we would kill people in just as cruel regards and crucify them and hang them without a trial and shit, most of you would go along with it. Oh, you'd claim you wouldn't. Oh, you'd be like, I'm opposed to this, but you wouldn't actually do anything. You wouldn't even dare say anything, because to say something is to invite punishment all the same. That's why I get fucking banned everywhere. Not because I'm a bad guy, but because I said something that some capital owner didn't like. They don't own a lot, they just own a fucking forum. But that's enough. That's enough to be a dick and have no accountability, no responsibility, no feelings, no emotion. Just, it's gonna be my way or he doesn't get to post here. And they think they can get away with it. And for now they can. Until then. Until something bad happens to them and they own nothing. Or until I see them and hurt them, you know. So that's the way evil works. And evil makes up a large portion, if not the only portion, of this world. And that's why the Christian God hates this world. That's why the closest thing to actual Christianity is these radical fundamentalists like Westboro Baptist Church. As much as everybody pisses on Westboro Baptist Church, they get it. They get the fact that this world is rotten, wretched, and useless. They get that this world thrives upon evil, upon murderous tendencies and rape and lies and bullshit. They understand that. Are they going about it the right way? I cannot say that with certainty. Would I spend 100% of my time talking about gays alone? No. I would say homosexuality is the symptom, not the disease. But, you know, at least they're doing something. At least they are saying something that is piercing into your black heart and shaking you up inside. You are disturbed by Westboro Baptist Church because you know in the end they are right. You know in the end God does not love you. Why would He love you? Why would anybody love you? You don't even love yourself. You don't love your parents. You don't love your friends and family. You don't love anything. You're incapable of love. Because if you were capable of love, you would be outraged. And you would be too outraged to just stand still and accept life as it is. Every day of your life would be a new struggle. Because it would be impossible for you to just accept things. I'm not saying you gotta go out there with a machete and slash people. You don't have to be literally like the Aztecs. But you have to think about these things. And you have to look for opportunities to make it better. And you're not willing to do that. So, that is the dominant culture. That is the hegemony of our society and of all societies. And, that's just what I'm getting at here. About how some wonderful cultures were buried. They were buried so deep that I don't think there's any chance of them coming back up and renewing themselves. And that's very terrible and very depressing because they were good cultures. And we could have learned a lot from them. And we can still learn a lot from them if we bother to read our history, but it would do us no good because most people do not ascribe to anything remotely like it. And even the people reading it probably don't. You know, they're just reading it for the sake of reading it. To say, ooh, I have a major in history. I'm smart. I know a lot of shit. But they don't apply it. They have no intention of using that to affect their personal lives or the lives of others, and it does not make them grow spiritually. So, that's what I'm trying to say here. See you later.